There is no comparison to the love of Christ. There is a million other treatment centers out there in the world, but the crown jewel of Teen Challenge is that love piece.
Jesus is my bridge to God, but Teen Challenge definitely was my bridge to Jesus Christ. The love of Christ isn't changing, but it is transforming. I grew up in a really good, loving family. Went to church Sunday mornings and Sunday nights. The first time catching my first buzz, I was 6 years old. It was the same year I remember that I was diagnosed with diabetes. It was just a simple little family get-together at my house, and they'd always have glasses of wine or beers, and they thought it was cute to give the kids a little sip of wine here or there, and I learned how to make my rounds, so I go from my grandpa and then to my grandma and then to my aunt. And I just remember the euphoria of feeling buzzed. I didn't feel like this diabetic kid who got picked on all the time, And I felt like I was a part of the party.
I had a pretty normal childhood. I loved going on adventures, very much loved outdoor life, and that's kind of who I was. Things started to begin shifting probably around 8 or 9. My dad was addicted to methamphetamines and prescription medications. We would move from home to home. Moving around, I really felt like pieces of myself were kind of left behind. I began having such bad panic attacks that I would actually pass out and stop breathing in school from hyperventilating, just wondering all these things that were going to happen when I go home, what's going to be waiting for me.
9 years old, I started smoking marijuana. Then I was introduced to methamphetamines at the age of 12. Started selling methamphetamines with the marijuana, and shortly after I was arrested in the middle of school, handcuffed and everything. Then I was put into alternative schools, and all that did was expanded my networking of getting drugs and finding drugs and trying new drugs, and got to a point where I was gonna do anything to be accepted. I had to be the center of attention. If it was the drugs, I had to do the most of them. If it was the party, I had to party the hardest. I needed to be accepted and have people act like they loved me or cared about me.
I went to mental health counseling, and through them, I was prescribed Xanax and Klonopin and Ativan. Those things did not help one bit. I would have to keep taking more and have to keep taking more. My dad had similar prescriptions, and so I did end up stealing his medications when I ran low. A turning point from personal use to selling, for me to have friends or for me to have people come over to my house, I would just say, just come over and I'll give you whatever you want, just hang out with me. One day I sold to somebody that I wasn't familiar with. From there, my whole house got raided. I was 14 years old.
So in the worst of my addiction, I just did everything I said I'd never do, whatever I needed to do to stay high on heroin, just no conscience and almost evil and not caring. But that's how much I hated myself. I hated myself. I hated what everybody was telling me, all this potential I had growing up and what I was gonna do with my life, and was just more of a reason to stay higher and get higher and try to get out of this as quick as possible, as far as life. So
I ended up dating this guy who I was buying Xanax from. The worst point was where I was getting thrown down the steps, dragged out by my hair, and I just had had enough. I knew if I stayed anymore, I was going to die. I think I kept going back because I just wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel like I mattered to someone. My parents actually ended up getting a divorce, and my mom later fell in love with this man who had gone through the Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. Seeing the chaos that I was in, he said, "You need some help and you need it now."
from county jail, I was brought up to Teen Challenge up in Brainerd. I was still in chains and shackles, and the staff was just so loving and made such an effort to make it as comfortable as possible. Sam Anderson, the director, came up. He said, "This wasn't all mistake and fault and failure, and everything you went through, all the pain, the suffering, the time, everything you brought everything through, it will not return void." And so it just gave me a hope again.
When I came into the program due to COVID, quarantine was 3 days long, and in those 3 days, I watched every Christian movie that they had, and I just remembered Passion of the Christ. Sitting there on my bed, watching this movie from start to finish. I just could not stop thinking about this guy. On the third day of quarantine, my staff came to the door and I asked her, like, what do I need to do to get this guy in my life? What do I need to do to receive Jesus? From that day forward, it has been nothing but beauty.
I graduated Teen Challenge Leadership Institute and was hired as a recovery coach at Portland. I wanted to love people the way I was loved without reason. I didn't need a reason. I was just going to love them. Even more so, God just gave me the heart to love the unlovable because I used to be the unlovable.
After graduation, I started working for the program. It was a role that I never thought I would be in, but I absolutely loved it. I loved being in connection with the women there.
When I saw Baily, she stood out. I thought very highly of her, not only the type of heart she had and her heart for the Lord, but I seen the calling over her life. So I just asked the Lord, I said, just put the best man in her life that's going to help her fulfill the plans that you have over her life. And I just didn't want her to end up with someone below that God would have, and including myself, how I felt about myself at the time.
Sean and I have really been partners in ministry since the beginning. At Teen Challenge Leadership Institute, we would go to tent revivals together. We would go to leadership training conferences together, and really just diving deeper with what God has called our lives to be. I really think that Teen Challenge showed me what I'm looking for in a husband, like what a healthy man looks like, what a healthy man treats a woman like. Growing up and in addiction, you don't have those examples too often. And so when I would look at Sean reaching people that were broken and homeless and helpless, that was a mental note, like that's what I'm looking for.
After we had dated and we decided to get married, the day of our wedding, and she started walking up the aisle, man, the Lord just said to me, whisper in my ear, he goes, I picked the best man for my daughter. And then I immediately went back to the conversation we had, because I was so sincere about the best man in her life. It really just broke off all these old beliefs and lies that I believed about what God thought about me.
MNTC is a place of love because that's what it's built on. The whole place is run with compassion and loving people through the hardest moments of their lives.
The love of God changed my life. Baily loving me changed my life. And because of all this love, I found love at MNTC. Life-changing love.